Now our MT09 project, we are making evil twin parts so that somewhere down the road we can switch parts and in effect have a new bike. Well, I have extra windshields, extra parts for this, that, and the other thing. And today we're going to start making the second of the windshields that we've made for this bike. And I have an idea in my mind, a vision of how I want to make it. I don't know if it's going to work out the way I plan or not until I actually do it. One way or another, it's going to be a very labor-intensive thing. But the little change that it makes, the very small change, is going to be one of those small details that changes the whole bike. And I hope it's going to work out. Well, even if it doesn't, you'll get to see what didn't work. So I guess there's some value in the video. So this is really pretty funny. You know how I hate Groundhog Days? All my friends know I hate Groundhog Days. Today is not going to be a Groundhog Day. It's going to be like unbelievable. We woke up yesterday. I did the photo with all the photos with the chain guard installed. I was thrilled to death the way this all worked out. Got my pictures, went and analyzed them so that today I can start planning my next project, next part of the project. And wake up this morning, just before I went to bed last night, they said, chance of ice. Well, my backyard you could play hockey in. We had more ice, it's frozen ice, the cars are iced in. You can't make this up. If the groundhog had ice skates, he'd be real happy today. So needless to say, I was pretty happy about the way that worked out. That played out just great, and we can move on to the next project. Now I've been doing this in steps, one step a day, not trying to get too far ahead of myself, and that's worked out well for me and for making this bike unique and my own bike. The biggest dilemma of this whole project has always been the windshield, and it's always been, even from day one, the choices that you can buy commercially, none of them really floated my boat that much. And then along came, after I had the bike a year, along came these, I call them the $26 windshields, and I have two of them. Well, this one's okay, but one of the things that I didn't really like is the gap here doesn't sit. See, if I can explain this, the gap here, it's big here and thin here. It's not equal all around. I wanted this to be chain. Now, I don't want to cut that windshield, that's why I bought a spare. And then I want to paint some trim on here, some trim that's going to match the gas tank. And I don't know how that is yet, I haven't planned it out. It's a work in progress, but today I'll get to spend some time laying it all out. Now, windshields are a funny thing. When this was Rob's bike, when he first bought it, he wanted a taller windshield. I hated the taller windshield. I always liked the stock one. And then when I made this carbon fiber part, well, I wanted to be able to see it. When you put the tinted windshield on, you really can't see it. I had two windshields for the R1. In fact, there's one still up there on the back. And what I wanted to do with this, I wanted one to just change the look of the nose of the bike. And after I had it for a while, I went and bought the other one. So I always have a spare windshield for that bike. This bike, the windshield was funny, and I'm just going, this is a short story. When we used to do track days with this bike, it was a track bike. What we had, the windshield would always crack, and because this bike has been crashed and nothing lines up. So as you tighten the screws, it put everything under tension. So I finally made a carbon fiber windshield. That solved the problem. But then, of course, when you're shooting video, not the windshield of choice. And on the 750, I have a high windshield and a low one. I like this one better for shooting video. So what it is, this is the spare windshield for the 650, and it does not have exactly the right curve in it. It's got too much curve, and I don't know if I could somehow use it. I had thought about this, but I'm going to bring it down a cellar and see if there's any possibility I can maybe use the bottom of it, or I could make a little windshield. I thought about that, a couple inches of windshield, somehow attach it to the back. I don't know yet, and that's the challenging part of this, is I don't know exactly what I want to do yet, but I have a spare one of these, and this will be an interesting day. I'm not going to get it finished today because there's no way you're going to paint out there right now. You can't even walk, let alone paint. Now this is the FZR windshield, and this has a lot of curve, so there's almost no way I can picture that this would be of any value, except I still have an idea. And this is something I'm not going to use anymore because we're not doing that. After all that 900-hour restoration, that bike will never see a racetrack again. So that's the end of that. Yeah, I may be able to use it. But see, I made this carbon fiber. This is one of the videos on my channel. When I made this, it's got 1 million hits. It's really got a lot of people who were interested in this. I was surprised. Now, I had thought of this before. This is the spare R1 windshield. And it's got pretty much the right, a little bit too much curve. But here's the thing it could do. Well, see, the windshield, if I change this, I need to know, because all of these polycarbonates, some of them cut beautifully, some of them you have to grind, and some you can't cut at all. It's impossible. So this is another thing. I could lay out a piece of this, try to cut it, see if I like it. If I don't like it, since I'm going to paint it anyway, I don't even care if it's scratched up. But some part of this may be usable, but it's really cold and icy out in the garage. I'm going to go down a cellar with these parts, see what I can come up with. So I say it all the time, when you have a old motorcycle collection, the older it is, the more things there are to do every day. But even with a new bike that you're modifying, it's an endless labor of love. And this bike has really turned out to be a lot of fun to work on. But that windshield, I would like to, I'd like to have more than one choice when I go to evil twin this out, probably at the end of this season coming up. And as always, everything we do is in the eye of the beholder. There's no right or wrong. It's what you think is going to work for you and make you enjoy the passion of motorcycling even more. I wanted to show what this ice storm is like, what it's done here. This is solid, and I mean solid ice. That's not snow. Just check out, and it's really right around freezing. Look at this, even the wisteria. I think that's priceless. Make a good picture if you're so inclined. But this is a messy day. No paint today, maybe no paint for a couple days. And there's not much you can do about it, and that's why I always do my projects in the winter. There's no way I want to be in that garage too much today. So because I'm making an evil twin part, I can always, the objective is always with any evil twin part that I can go back and put the original part back on a bike. So I don't want to take the one off the bike and cut it. That's why I bought this one. So I'm going to trim this one as one of my first exercises. But before I do that, I want to see now, again, this came from China. Maybe all this came from China, I don't know. But these materials, and Midgley used to have the machine that vacuum formed these, and I saw how he did it, and it was pretty interesting. But the problem is, you don't know all these materials at different thicknesses. This is the thinnest one of all. This is the thicker. And this one has the carbon fiber. So, but it's the shape, and I wanted to see just how, if I cut one of these up, maybe we'll not wait on that one. But I always had this from the R1. I painted this on the front here. And I always thought that someday I'll want to use this for something. Now, if I went around the side, I don't know how this would play out. See, I don't know. That's the problem. So it looks like if I trace that out, and trace that out, again, this is what makes it challenging to do this kind of stuff. Of course, you never know where it's going to play out. This one looks the most practical, like we really could possibly use this. So this would be, we'd have to figure out how I'm going to do that. Okay, so again, I'm going to think this through, have a cup of coffee as I always do in the morning. See if I can spread some salt out there on the sidewalk so nobody trips. But this has always been in the back of my mind, how to do this. But I want to see if the first thing is if I can cut this material. This is unique material. It's not like the other. These are much thicker. And I don't know. I did cut this one back already. And I know it was a long, I used a saw blade. Well, we'll see. We'll see how this is going to play out. And it's this angle here that doesn't match up to the bike. So I thought the first thing I can do is trim that angle back. Trim this piece off. See how that fits, number one. And see if that's going to be a possibility. But then I wanted to paint it and paint some striping, and again, I have not figured that out yet. And some parts of this job take a lot longer than you think they do. You think you just go throw that tape on there and it's going to be exactly in the right spot the first time. And then you wind up doing it many times and you finally get it right. You look at it from every angle and then you change your mind. So a lot of the time you don't really see the time that goes into something, but when it's all done, it looks easy to do. Now, in this case, I wanted to put extra tape on this because the first thing I wanted to do is try to cut it with the Dremel saw. Some polycarbonate I've cuts fine, some doesn't. It shatters, it cracks, it breaks. The tape kind of stacks the deck in your favor. Then what I wanted to do is go to the back of the part and look up to a light and see exactly where that edge comes, because I want to cut that little lip off. And if you look at the photos that I have done on the Photoshop, the part that looks wrong with this, first of all, is when you lay the windshield back, the angle of the front doesn't match. As you lay it back, the angle changes, of course. It's a parallax view. So what happens is I have to change that front angle. Then I wanted to also get a little bit of that lip removed. That lip is a little bit too big. Now this is trickier than you think. I masked off what I thought the material that has to be removed. I measured it with the little dead stop on a razor blade. And I'll try to cut, first thing I'm going to do is try to cut this with the Dremel saw and hopefully not crack it, but leave enough material on that I can finish it off with a sanding block and get a nice even cut. But what I did, I looked up to a bright light to make sure I had the same amount of tape on both sides, and an old modeling trick that we used many times. But anyway, I think this will be, now if I don't break it, if it breaks, game over. But, or it cracks. Now, I'm going to put a brand new blade in the saw and see if the saw is going to cut it. If the saw doesn't want to cut it, then the trick is I've got to sand it, grind it, maybe run the belt sander on it, I don't know. But the tape is there to try to prevent it from cracking, give it a little stability. I don't know if that's going to work because this is a material I don't really use in the shop that often. But I guess we're going to find out here. Moment of truth. Now, I know from having done this before that a lot of times it welds itself back together, so I wasn't really enthusiastic about this, but I wanted to give it a fair shot. Now, this is, again, this is material from China. It's not something you can buy in Lowe's, and you never know until you actually do the experiment if that material is going to be easy to cut or a disaster. So the first thing we learned about this material, and each material is again unique. We put a saw cut in it. It didn't matter about the saw cut because what happens as the blade goes through, right behind the blade, it welds itself right back together. So the saw is not going to be an appropriate way. I'm going to have to resort, step 2 is to try to get some of this off with the belt sander. We'll see how that works. And you know, when you're working with new material that you don't work with all the time, this is always a problem. Now I remember other material I've tried to cut like this, and it puts the cut in, but it welds itself right back together. And actually I didn't see it as I was cutting that, but okay. But we did learn that that's not going to be an appropriate choice to cut this with a saw. So whatever's going to happen to this material, we're going to have to either grind it off with a Dremel tool or with the belt sander. I guess the next step is to see if this is going to come off with the belt sander conveniently. But again, a lot of experiment, and if we break it, that's why I have 2 of them. Now the reality, and the thing I learned from grinding this and using the belt sander and the various grits on the side and on the belt itself, that it really is, even a belt sander is just melting this material. It's really a, well, an unusual kind of plastic. It doesn't want to cut, but you can grind it and melt it. So what actually happens is you don't sand the material, it burns its way through and it picks it up to make like a little rolled up edge. But it's definitely doable that we're going to get it done this way, and it hasn't cracked the windshield yet, but I'm constantly in between going over to the belt sander, getting rid of these edges because they just clog up the belt of the sander. Okay, so that came off. We're up there already. That'll be fine. Little by little. Now the last little bit we're going to do by hand anyway, so we're almost at that point now. The last, I don't know, 64th of an inch, we'll do that by hand, right up to the tape. So I thought one of the things that'd be worth trying is a finer grit belt. I've got finer grit belts. I've got to make sure I've got one here. Okay. If we just put a finer grit belt, I think that'll do it. And maybe that'll make it'll grind off, but it's actually burning its way through. It just heats the material, and then it makes that lip that you have to trim off with a razor. But at least at the end of this, I know I can modify this material, because this material is very prone to cracking. So just taking a hacksaw to it or something. This is the kind of thing I enjoy, because I enjoy working with different materials I've never worked with before. And then this will open the door if I want to cut those other windshields. I know it's going to be difficult with that blade I have. Maybe I have to get a different blade. Now, changing out the belt seemed like a really good investment anyway, since the belt was pretty worn. And I always have to do a little fine tuning on this. This is a really old, fine tune that belt. It's an old belt sander. And I'm glad I changed out the belt. The new belt was cutting a lot better than the old one. And I think the grit was a little finer too, but it ultimately worked. And then I want to clean up this edge. Of course, at the end of every one of these jobs, the last part of everything is sanding by hand. I don't know why that is, but the new sanding belt worked much better than the old one. Of course, that's probably true of everything new, from new motorcycles to new people. Anyway, we'll pull the rest of this off and see what we got. Now, as always, the last little bit always has to be by hand, but I'm very happy to have learned how to use this material, how to cut it now, how to grind it, I guess. But I think I might need a different blade. Maybe they make a blade for cutting this kind of polycarbonate, plexiglass, whatever you call this. And I want to radius that off pretty much to where it matches that, and go look at it, get a test fit. It seems like every part of everything we do, at the end, there's always a lot of hand sanding and a lot of hand fitting. And since we're going to be joining this to some extra parts, I wanted everything that might have an epoxy joint on it to have that etch. And I haven't even figured out what those parts are going to be like. But that's the fun of doing a job like this. So as I'm out here doing a dry fit, I'm going to take the other windshield off. It's this angle that this does not match up here the way I like. And that's what I'm going to try to make a little correction on. So I've got to pull this windshield off and just do a dry fit. And these carbon fiber brackets and that little dashboard for the clock seem to have worked out pretty well so far. What I wanted to do is pretty much mimic this angle real well, and make an adjustment to this so I can get the angle of the headlight and the angle of this to be pretty much the same. So to get this correct, I need to remove this amount of material, and of course the stock part is not really correct. So we're going to go down a belt sander, take that material off, and then come back. Now, a project like this doesn't happen very quickly. It just evolves, and I know that even on the part that's the other part of this windshield, the other blue one, this angle was always wrong right from the get-go. So we can straighten that out right now, and this is going to be a back and forth many times. Now, getting that angle to be correct was a lot of back and forth, but it's the kind of detail that when it's wrong, it really looks bad, and when you get it right, it's exceptional. Now I'm hoping that angle is going to be a lot more accurate. I'll dress that edge off with a sanding block. That'll be an exact match to that angle. I guess we're going to find out the hard way. Time for another dry fit. Now the dry fits really do take a lot of time, back and forth, but in the end, you always seem to get it better than if you try to do it without a lot of dry fits. Now, to me, what looks better is we've got a similar gap on the bottom, and when this is blue, of course, we'll have the same gap. The other one, we had no gap at the top, almost none. So that looks like it might be a little improvement. Now, I'm looking at the possibility of maybe adding these little pieces to tie into that angle and that angle. Now that we have the front a lot more accurate, what it does, it kind of mimics that piece now, and when it's painted blue, well, because this is all going to be painted, I can do Bondo there, bodywork, whatever. It won't really matter, but that would be an easy thing to do. And because we still have the other windshield, and this is only an evil twin part, we'll be able to go back and forth relatively easily. So I think what I'm going to do is, well, it's time for a break here anyway, but this is, the next step on this is going to be to figure out what, if anything, I want to do with that. See, and from the front, that kind of ties it in better. Yeah, to be honest, I like that. See, this is what I don't like, is when you sit here, and this part sticks out. This is not, it looks like it doesn't belong there. This makes it look a lot more like it belongs on those headlights. So I think what I'm going to do is cut out a couple of pieces of carbon fiber. I have some scraps, and just temporarily glue them on and see if I like it. This is what's nice about doing this kind of stuff. You can go back and forth. If you don't like it, snap it off, grind it off, whatever. But this is, I think that's one of the steps I'm going to do here. That's, and having the same gap bottom and top, I like that a lot. And this is how, when you're making unique, one-of-a-kind motorcycles, this is what happens. Is it's a lot of back and forth, and a lot of ideas that don't work out, and you have to undo them. But in the end, you always have something, I think, worthwhile. We're going to take a little break on this beautiful ice stormy day. Look at these plants. How cool is that? The trees, everything's ice covered. We're going to go over and see what's going on over at the kids' construction project. What's that buddy doing? You like that ice storm, buddy? Ice dog. Oh, oh! So tomorrow we're going to take the rest of their furniture. And you can see the dumpster here. Dumpster is ready to load. Most of the house is already in that dumpster. And they're going to put the new flooring in soon. And that's the pod. Everything's going in that pod. What a day to have an ice storm, huh? Wow. What an adventure. Everything in my life's an adventure. Good adventures. I never saw a happier dog. He's so happy to see me. Don't you get me all muddy. Don't you get me all muddy. You were going to come and help me work on that windshield. What happened? So we couldn't get inside here to take some pictures, but tomorrow everything's going to wind up in that pod. Maybe we can get a picture of the inside. It's gutted. After checking out the house, here we are. This is now the little pattern I made on a little trip to the garage. I need to make this out of some material. I probably have some carbon fiber that would be appropriate. And I need to glue that in place. But I need to make sure they're not up or down. They're going to be like, I want them to be exactly even. And then I'm going to have to do a little Bondo radius in there, among other things. And where we come to a point, it got pretty thin. I'm going to put some epoxy in there just to stiffen that up so nobody bumps into that. So the next thing is to find some material. So this is the carbon we have left over from the little side pieces we made. And what I'll do, and this is just ordinary carbon fiber. It's not herringbone or anything. We're going to paint it so it doesn't have to be pretty. Try to use this up somehow efficiently here. See how we could get maybe that piece in there. That would work right there. Now, it's always good when I cut these out on the jigsaw, cut them out a little bit oversized, and we'll do the final grinding and fitting by hand. And I'm going to have to make up a flat surface that I can do the epoxy gluing on. Yeah, we'll get these two out of there very conveniently, but this is the leftover scrap, and obviously I never throw any scrap away. Now this type of unidirectional carbon, it does cut pretty nice with a Dremel saw. A little bit rough on blades, and so anytime you're going to do this, always have an extra pack of blades around. Now whenever I'm working with carbon fiber, I try to vacuum up the dust as soon as possible. The less of that you breathe in, the better. Now the next step on this is I'm going to have to dress these parts off so they're a good accurate fit and they're symmetrical. And if you slip even a little bit, you won't have to go for a manicure for about a year. How do I know that? Ask me how I know that. Now one of the good tricks you can use if you're joining up two surfaces like this, you can put an angle cut. It's almost like doing molding if you've ever done Victorian molding. Angle cut the parts that are going to... So I taped this part down because it obviously we want to get this surface level, and I want to have, I did a little hand fitting on that. I want a reasonably good fit on that, Still needs a little trimming, or maybe I got them backwards here, but it doesn't really matter. We will get this so we have a minimum glue fit there. Now, anywhere that the glue is going to be, I'm going to have to roughen that up, and I'm going to radius all the edges off on this before I actually mix the glue, and then get them to just be tacked on with that 5-minute glue. And all this little hand sanding, fitting, getting the corners, the angles, the edges, get a nice tight fit there. Just no different than if you were building a model airplane. Get the fits nice. And as I'm looking at this from a lot of different angles, I think I'm going to like this. But again, we'll see. So this is the glue we're going to use to tack glue those little winglets in place. And it'll take 5-10 minutes, but we're going to put it aside to dry then. We're not going to try to work on it while that glue is not cured. Now the sequence of things here with the 5-minute epoxy, mixing this up. Shop conditions, it's relatively chilly, so that's going to take more than 5 minutes to cure, maybe 20 minutes, you never know. And mixing it thoroughly, kind of self-explanatory. Butter both sides of the part. I have little angles on it, just like if you were doing Victorian crown molding, so that the parts join well and you don't have a big giant glue gap there. And getting that glue to sit, it's sitting on a piece of parchment paper on a flat surface. It's actually one of Karen's cutting boards. If she finds out I'm using her cutting board, I might not get any cookies next week. A little bit extra epoxy on top. Use some clean Q-tips to clean off the edges. And basically now that's going to sit overnight. That before I can work on it, lean on it, and I think it's going to be fine. I don't want to rush it. This is the kind of thing. You start rushing this, nothing but a headache. So this is the end of part 1 of the windshield video, and I don't know what we're going to do with these other windshields. I don't know how that's going to come out. That epoxy really is going to be dry in 15-20 minutes, but it's been a long day and we've got family stuff to do. So what I'm going to do is just dream about this overnight and think if I can come up with some other ideas. While I'm making it, see, now once you have one evil twin part and you're happy with it, you make the second one and you're not happy with it, you don't use it. Put it on eBay or whatever. But in my case, I think I'm going to be happy. This is going to look, in my mind, I can picture how it's going to look. And usually when I can envision something, I can usually make it happen. Sometimes. So I ended this day on a really positive note. I was real happy that we made progress on the windshield today. It's one of the parts that's going to define this motorcycle when I'm done with that. And I'm happy we got Luciano's stuff done the other day. I'm happy yesterday, before this ice and snow came, that we got a photo shoot of the bike with all the latest mods, so I can look at it tonight after I'm done editing, and I can just drool over what the next thing is going to be. But you look at this bike now, and I look at the picture of the bike the day I bought it. Now see, the front of it doesn't really match the headlight on that, because it's a parallax angle. That's the problem. And I know adding a little blue to the front fender really made me think that was a good thing. The scoops, and we had thought about making them silver, thought about making them black, shiny black, and blew one out in the end. I think Karen had the final vote. And I'm going to put some trim on this windshield, some silver trim. But overall, having all these photos is critical. Super, super critical. I even have pictures of before I polished the exhaust. I was so disappointed with that rough exhaust. And that was a lot of hours. And the wheels. The wheels changed the whole bike. But every step of it, we've done it step by step by step. The little carbon covers for the side of the frame plugs over the bolts. As I look at it, it's hard to imagine how many detail changes there are. And I can't wait to park this next to a totally stock, especially if it's one of the flat black ones, MT09, so I can just look side by side by side by side and see how different it is. Now, but none of this would be worth any value at all to me if you couldn't go out and ride the bikes. And with our about roughly a 9-month riding season every year, I like to have as many of the bikes all set to go with fresh tires, batteries that are charged, and nothing to stop me from just going out to the garage and picking a bike to ride and thinking to myself, wow, it's a sunny day. I get my exercise,
I share my passion with motorcycling with the friends I meet along the way, or up at Perry's, or at the market, or wherever. And it couldn't be any better. It just couldn't. I lied. It could be better. It could be better if on one of these rides I could find a fountain of youth. But hey, you know, I realize every day that goes by, I appreciate the life that I've been able to have, the friends I have through motorcycling and modeling. I've been very, very fortunate, very lucky, and I've enjoyed all the people that contribute to YouTube, and I've tried to become one of the people that has put something back at the end of a very, very enjoyable life. So hope you did enjoy the video. Hope you enjoy sharing our passion for motorcycling. And we'll see you tomorrow.